Hello knitters, Barbara Benson here. I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. Make sure to check in the description below where you will find links to all of my online shenanigans, including where to get my patterns to knit up for yourself, how to join the Watch Barbara Knit Facebook group, and how to support me on Patreon. This week, I am talking about acrylic yarn. And there's a reason why I'm talking about acrylic yarn, because I got a postcard. So a while back, I put it out there on an older video that if y'all wanted a higher chance of me answering a question you might have, sending it to me via snail mail on a postcard is a sure way to get my attention. Because who doesn't like getting mail? And it just seems fancier when it's on a postcard. So, and I am still, you know what? I got this. It's been a while since I got one. I was very excited to get it in my P.O. box. So if you want to send me a question on a postcard, I would love to get it. I will put my P.O. box in the description below, but you can also find it on the About page for my channel. So this is the super fun postcard that I received, and it says, and it's from, judging by the postal stamp, Syracuse, New York, and it says, "Hi Barbara, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge." Well, thank you for listening to me babble. I am a photographer, isn't everybody? Yeah, pretty much. Now that everybody carries a phone in their pocket, everybody's a photographer. Who took this photo on this card, which is really cool. The idea you can have your own photos made into a postcard is amazing. I am not photographing in the cold weather and COVID, just obsessing on yarn. Am a beginning knitter. Question. As a beginner, I gravitated to Walmart, Hobby Lobby, etc. and bought acrylic yarn. Can you comment on the pros and cons of that type of yarn? Thanks, Renee. Well, Renee, thank you very much for this question. I am super excited that you are a beginning knitter and having fun, I hope, and learning. You're at the beginning of an awesome journey. Acrylic yarn. Okay, so do I like expensive, fancy, soft, beautiful yarn? Yes. Am I a yarn snob? No. I think that there is probably an application for just about any kind of yarn out there. And the best kind of yarn for you to knit with is the kind that you can get your hands on, okay? If you are in an accessibility kind of place where you're in a yarn desert, I just made up that term. You know how there are food deserts? Well, it's a yarn desert. No place to go get your yarn. Or if it's just the most accessible, financially, physically, whatever, you know what? Knit with the yarn that you love. Okay, that is what I'm going to say to start with. Now, acrylic yarn, and what acrylic yarn is it's a man-made plastic yarn. It is made out of, I don't know how it's made, but it's plastic, essentially. It's made out of the same thing that they make plastic bags out of, that's, I believe, oil is where it all comes from ultimately. Is this still in focus? Okay. I have a new web camera and I'm not sure if it's keeping focus right. It has a lot of pros and it has some cons, and it is smart of you to be asking about it. So acrylic is, let's start with the pros. You can throw acrylic in the washing machine and the dryer and it will come out just fine. It holds its color and it's going to be pretty much the same as it is when it comes out as when you put it in. It's not going to shrink. Depending on how it's plied and how tight those fibers are, it can pill, but it doesn't pill the way that natural fibers do. It is a wonderful choice for if you are creating something that is going to go to an environment where you don't know what level of care it's going to receive. Say you're crocheting or knitting something for a someone who is in an assisted living facility, or someone who is in the hospital, or someone who just doesn't know how to care for, like you're crafting for a baby, but you're not 100% sure on whether or not the parents are going to care for, and frankly, if they want to care for, because if you do a blanket or baby clothes and things like that, they're gonna get barfed on. It's just what happens with baby stuff. And so, do you want to do that out of cashmere? It's up to you. Being able to throw something in the washer and the dryer and it come out is great. So those are all wonderful things. And it also tends to be a very affordable type of yarn. As you mentioned, it is what is considered, in the lingo, a big box yarn, which means it comes from one of the big box stores, such as Walmart's, Joann's, Michael's, things like that. That doesn't make it bad yarn. There are gorgeous yarns in all of these stores. And if you are buying acrylic yarn because you don't think you can afford natural fibers, I'd encourage you to dig a little deeper in these big box stores like Michael's and Joann's, because there are lovely affordable yarns that are natural fibers, particularly the Patons, Patons classic wool line. It comes in fingering, DK, worsted, like roving style. Some of it is multicolor. Is a wonderful yarn for if you want to work with 100% wool. So, and frankly, it is comparably priced to some of the higher end acrylic yarns that you find in those same stores. Now, things that people don't like about acrylic: the hand on it, how it feels. Sometimes it can be very, very soft, and that's awesome. Sometimes it's a little plasticky. I mean, it just feels a little bit scratchy. Now, I know people who buy the yarn that comes in the big logs, like Pound O' Love and things like that, who swear by taking the label off, loosening it, putting it in a like lingerie bag and washing it before they knit with it. And that softens it up. And so it's more pleasant to work with because it will change when you wash it. I have never tried doing it because I just imagine pulling the bag out full of just a giant rat's nest of yarn and it not staying in the log. But people do that. That's another thing about acrylic. Some of it will change and soften with wash. Some of it, again, it's going to be exactly the same in going in as coming out. So now, things that natural fibers can do that acrylic doesn't do as successfully is wools and natural fibers a lot of natural fibers have different characteristics, and specifically wool has a grabbiness. Now, this grabbiness of the fiber is the same thing that makes it felt, but it gives it the ability to hold its shape better. It's called memory. And if you're looking at doing something like one of those really heavily cabled fisherman sweaters or something like that, you're going to use a lot of yarn, and that yarn, it's going to have weight to it. It's going to be a heavy piece. The wool has grabbiness and holds its shape. If you try to take and substitute acrylic directly into that pattern that was designed for wool, the acrylic is not going to be able to hold its shape as well because it doesn't have that grabbiness, and over time the weight of the yarn itself is going to cause that garment to maybe elongate and stretch out of shape, and that's just the nature of acrylic yarn. Now, some people would say you can block natural fibers and you can't block acrylic. And I say, you are incorrect. You can and should block acrylic yarns if that is the look you want. But unlike just washing and blocking, if you have a natural fiber, you wash it, you soak it, you block it. If you don't like what happened, you can then soak it again and block it again and reshape it. Acrylic, you have to use a steam heat method to block, and I have a video on it I will link in the description below. And it actually, when you do that heat, they call it killing it. You're actually melting it, and it sets it in shape. And you get one shot, and once you've done it, it's done. But it can do wonderful things. I've done simple baby garments that were curling up a little bit because of the stockinette. I didn't put enough garter edging on it, and I took my steamer to it and held it over, and you could just see it physically relax and lay out. And it also changed the hand of it and made it softer and made it drapier, and it was just absolutely lovely. So you can block acrylic yarns. It's just that you can't really re-block acrylic yarns. Plus side, again, going back to our scenario where you're maybe making a prayer shawl for someone who's in a facility, if you block lace with acrylic and steam set it, that shawl can go in the washer, go in the dryer, come out, and still look decent. It's not going to look exactly like it did, because depending on what level of heat they used in the dryer, but it is going to hold out its block much better than a natural fiber would in that same scenario. Okay, what else? Acrylic comes in really bright colors, and it can hold those colors really well. You aren't going to see as much acrylic in the multicolor variegated realm that is the hand-dyed look, because they're acrylic and they're mass produced, they don't have as much. Also, if you really like acrylic, you might want to look into their lovely acrylic blends that can be, you can find acrylic blended with cotton, you can find acrylic blended with wools, and it brings an ease and care and strength to it. It usually brings the price down. It turns it into a more of an easy care garment or piece, but you still have a lot of those qualities from the natural fibers that you might like. Now, you can get into discussions about how eco-friendly acrylic yarn is, but then you can get into those discussions about superwash yarns, and it's just, if that is a concern, if the ecological impact of your yarns is a concern for you, I highly recommend you do research on that, because there are really valid points to be made in multiple different areas about that. That said, acrylic yarn, if you make an acrylic, knit something out of acrylic, it's going to be around for pretty much ever. And that has got a lot of wear to it. And it's something that people can wear for a very long time. So that can be considered a positive, because it's not really disposable clothing. But the same can be said for a really well hand knit wool piece or what have you. So, have I wandered too much? So, you're not going to catch me ragging on acrylic yarn, because it, like every other fiber, has its time, it has its purpose and its application, and sometimes it is preferable. There are, as with other yarns, there is a range in quality of acrylic yarns. And so some of them are going to be on the lower end of quality. The colors might not be as nice. It's not quite as well spun. It's a little scratchy. And frequently quality corresponds with cost. But if the only place you have to shop is Walmart, or if that's your preferred place to shop, use the yarn if you like it. I personally would rather do fewer projects and save the money to buy yarn that I really like knitting with than buy lots of inexpensive yarn that is not necessarily what I prefer to knit with. But that is because I knit for the process of knitting. I knit for the enjoyment of knitting, and the time I am spending with that yarn is as or more valuable to me than the end product. If what you're looking for is the end product and you just want to make as much as possible, you've got your own checks and balances. You've got your own things to weigh and decide what you want to do. I don't know if I answered your question. Hang on. Let me check. I don't know if I answered your question, Renee. I would say the pros. Easy care, reasonably priced, comes in, you know, lots and lots. I mean, they can make an acrylic yarn to mimic just about any, visually at least, just about any yarn that's out there. Cons are, once you've blocked it, you can't reblock it. It doesn't have a lot of memory to it, so it can distort over time. But the same can be said of some natural fibers. I'm trying to think of cons for acrylic yarn. Some people just don't like the feel of it. But if you don't mind the feel of it, if you like the feel of it, then that's not a con. That's just personal preference. I'm just struggling to think of cons for so if you're really into innovative design, I would say that not a lot of designers like really design for acrylic yarns, and substituting an acrylic yarn into a pattern that has been designed for wool, as we discussed, like can be problematic because it doesn't have the same properties. So be careful with that when you experiment with that. But that's just the nature of things. I hope that this answered your question. I am, if acrylic is what you like to knit with, if acrylic is what you are able to knit with, don't let anyone tell you that there's something that is a problem, because we all do what we are comfortable with and what we can manage. I have contemplated specifically designing shawls in acrylic yarns just to prove that it can be done, because I find, I mean, I teach the blocking class. I love blocking and what it does, but I find the steam heat blocking where you set it and it stays to just be the most magical, because it's like, poof, there it is. It's amazing. And I think it'd be fun to play with that and experiment a bit more with acrylic yarns. So those are my thoughts on acrylic yarns. You might want to look into, if you're enjoying them, some of the higher end ones. There are beautiful ones that are blended with other things. Knit Picks, if accessibility is one of your issues, Knit Picks has some wonderful acrylic blends. I use some of them in my book. And you can just get a single ball and play with it and see if you like it. Knit Picks is, I feel, cost-wise, relatively competitive with some of the bigger box yarns. So there we go, acrylic yarn. Thank you for sending me this amazing postcard. It really made my day having something in my post office box alongside my W-2 form, which was not anywhere near as exciting. So if you like this video, please give it the thumbs up, click that like button, and if you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.